Hi, this is John with Fix It Planet. Today we got a Galaxy S7 that's pretty badly smashed up. There's some edges and corners that are going to need a little bit of work on them before we can put the new screen on. So we're going to be replacing the display assembly and the back glass. So as you can see, the phone is on. There's no display. It's all smashed up. So we won't be needing a suction cup for the back. We put it on a preheater. Got it warmed up, and I'm just going to start with a metal tool just to kind of get it started here. This corner is pretty badly cracked, so we're going to get some of this loose here, and then we'll get a plastic pick out. Finish up cutting through this adhesive. Now there is an Nfc antenna. Brought this up before in other videos, so you want to be careful that you don't tear the Nfc antenna when you're removing this back glass. If you get a little nick on the edge, it's probably okay, but if you tear it, you're going to have to replace it. So some of this is just sort of repeat stuff, but since we had the S7 and I don't have another S7 video, I figured we'd go ahead and put it on here. So I don't know, hopefully this video will be useful for someone. We're going to go from start to finish. There's going to be some boring bits in here. I've had a few people complain because they act like they can't figure out something without having somebody tell them exactly every little thing. In any case, this video is not going to skip anything of any real importance, and so it's a little bit longer, probably by about 10 minutes, maybe 15. In any case, what I'm basically referring to is adhesive. In this case, we aren't able to reuse our adhesive because we'll be replacing the back, and it's going to come with new adhesive. The back glass replacement that we got already has adhesive on it, so we won't be needing to worry about that. But on the display assembly, in this particular case, this display assembly did not come with the original adhesive. So we're going to have to manually put our adhesive on, and this has been one complaint, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, anyway, multiple complaints from various individuals who just insist that I've left out the most important part of the entire video by not showing them the process of installing the adhesive strips. So if you don't want to have to sit through all that, by all means skip through it. Anytime you're using metal tools of any kind, you'll notice from time to time I've got like the metal tweezers, etc. You want to be extremely careful that you're not knocking off components on the motherboard. And this is our Nfc antenna and a couple of caps, little antenna caps here. We're going to piece them together like a puzzle and set them to the side. Just showing front and back side, and then we're going to disconnect the battery, located right here. This connector just pops loose, and then the display connector will we'll disconnect the display connector there, and any other connectors that may be attached to the main board that prevent us from taking it out. I don't know how relevant this video is. I noticed the S6 video doesn't get very many views. Doesn't seem like anybody cares about that one. The S7 Edge seems to get quite a few views. The S8 gets quite a few views. So we'll see. I don't know. And of course, you can't take the motherboard out without removing this SIM tray, which I always seem to forget. So before you start trying to yank this board out of there, it comes out real easy when you take the SIM tray out. You can press right there where I just pointed on the back of the display. So we're going to heat it up. Again, we've heated it up, and we're going to press on that back of the display right there, and we're going to make a little gap. Apparently I didn't get it quite hot enough because it's still resisting me quite a bit. But Tennessee Tuxedo will not fail. So we're just going to get one of our fingernails in there and hold that out and get a pick in between, and we'll get started ripping the screen off of here. Not a pretty sight. So in this case, we were not able to salvage any of the original adhesive, so we took it all off because, yeah, if it's not perfect, you need to replace it. If you're going to attempt to reuse the original adhesive, that's fine in some cases if it's absolutely in perfect condition and not damaged in any way. Otherwise, you might as well just replace it. Now on the S7, you still have the little capacitive buttons on the bottom, left and right hand side. So as we work our way down the phone, we're going to be careful that we watch out for that. Now the angle's not too good, so you can't see quite yet. The screen's kind of in the way here, so you can't see them just yet, but we're going to work our way from the top of the phone to the bottom of the phone, and just be very careful because right down in there are these little buttons, and what we don't want to do is we don't want to tear into the buttons. Now I apologize for this angle because I know you can't really see what I'm doing, but basically I'm just making sure that the adhesive and anything else that might cause those buttons to lift up or tear, we're removing that out of the way and making sure that they are seated properly back inside the frame. So you can see just down inside there, I'm just using the tool to kind of press up against them. And now we're going to cut the rest of this adhesive away from the bottom of the frame. Now you can clearly see those buttons here and here. There's that connector right there for this home button too. You want to just be mindful of that. So those are all items that you want to watch out for when you're removing the screen with your tool. If you've got earwax and other kinds of dust and debris in your speaker grill, we want to go ahead and clean that out. So we'll just take a little brush and brush that out. Set it to the side. That's no good anymore. Can't reuse that. And you know, I get a lot of other comments about, you know, why we don't do glass only and all this kind of stuff. You know, back in the day when you had some of the original Samsung S3, the Note 1 and 2, be careful of the battery here. Again, you don't want to put metal tools into that and gouge it when you're taking the back of that screen off. Just a little note to point out. Anyway, on glass-only repairs on the newer phones, the new Samsungs, they're not really practical. It can be done if you have nice, good equipment. We're going to go around the edges here now and get all the dirt and debris and leftover adhesive and scrape all that out of there. We're going to clean up the edges really good and get all the residue, anything left over. Front and back side, all the way around. If you don't do this, if you don't take the extra time to clean these edges and get that stuff out of there, you're going to have a problem. It's not going to stick. It's not going to want to stay down. You're going to have areas that could potentially cause a crack when pressure is applied. So you do need to take the time to do this a little extra bit of work. Back to glass-only repair. Again, I just want to emphasize that we don't do glass-only repair anymore. It is not practical. Look at that nastiness. We're going to go all the way around the edges on both sides, get this stuff cleaned up. So, the new displays, ooh, look at that. Yuck. So we're going to also clean out that speaker grill. Where the speaker grill was, it's got lots of nastiness inside there. And look at that. Ew. Gross. Yep. None of that's any good. So the new OLED screens that they make for these Samsung phones are just super thin. They're about as thin, just about like construction paper. And of course, everybody should know. I'm sure everybody doesn't know, but anybody who does this on a regular basis knows that these screens are fused together with the polarizers and touch screens. All that stuff is all layered together and fused with special glue. And if you want to attempt a glass-only repair, by all means, you go right ahead. I'm not going to waste my time on it. It's more labor. Ugh. We'll be washing our hands when we're done here, that's for sure. It's actually a lot more labor to do glass-only repair and a higher risk of damaging components of the display that you may need to replace. That could be the screen itself or the polarizer or whatever. In any case, you can do it if you have special equipment, and there are some people that just insist on doing it by hand with a few extra special tools. They might manage to pull it off. I don't find it's worth the hassle. To be honest with you, these cell phone repairs are a joke. You don't make any money off of these repairs. Most of the cost of this repair is going to go into the replacement part. Most people are not willing to spend any more than they have to, which is, can't blame them for that, to get these phones repaired. But obviously, if you have a $600 phone or better, and you have no insurance and it's not paid off, you may have to just bite the bullet and pay to get it repaired. It's not a fun thing. It's not something people like to spend their money on, so I can understand all that. But we really do not make the bulk of any of our money off of doing these phone repairs. Frankly, the way my camera setup is right now, it's not good enough to do videos of many of the other repairs that I do. These are just convenient and easy because I can just shoot from overhead down onto the mat, and I can get a pretty good shot of a small device such as a tablet or a cell phone. But we do a lot of other repairs as well. Eventually I'll start doing more repair videos on other things once I can afford to pay for the additional equipment that I'm going to need for a whole different camera setup. But right now, this is just the most convenient and practical way to shoot a video for those purposes. Phones and tablets seem to do real well. I've brought it up before. Eventually I'll have a microscope camera and I'll be able to do some microscope shots of any micro soldering repairs that we do. And but I want to get a decent camera. I want to get something that's going to be able to give me the kind of quality that I would like to see if I were watching it. So that's a lot of money for me, and I just haven't been able to afford the expense. And we're also going to do some grinding on these corners here. They've been dented inward, and because they're dented inward, they could, for one thing, the new glass display won't really fit properly because of the denting, and also because if you try to force it, you're going to have a stress fracture. So what we want to do is grind these corners out and eliminate, the risk of getting a stress fracture. So we want to make sure that they're smooth and fit the contour of the curve of the actual display, and don't apply any additional pressure on the actual glass. So yeah, we're just going to use like a Dremel tool type tool with special grinder tips. I have a variety of different ones for different kinds of applications, and in this particular case we're using a kind of, I don't know what kind of shape you call that anyway. Sort of at an angle. I don't know what the name of that tip is. In any case, so yeah, I do plan to do different kinds of videos eventually. This channel's only been up for about 11 months. It's really kind of new. I'm fairly new at all of this in terms of YouTube and YouTube channels. So we're pretty small time, chump change when it comes to this sort of thing. So I really appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, all of this kind of stuff, sharing. All of that is very helpful to me when you do that. But we have a variety of other computer repairs. We do a lot of computer repairs. Obviously we do headphone repair. We obviously do the watches. But I get all kinds of stuff. I get just all kinds of electronics actually come through here. Baby monitors and GPS units and PC boards. Actually, I had somebody bring in a jukebox, or not a jukebox, a slot machine PC board. Needed some repair done on it, but you can't really do a start to finish on something like that because they just brought me the actual board. They didn't bring the whole machine in. That would have been interesting, but not very practical. So right now we're just going to check and see if this screen is going to fit down in the frame properly and not have any sort of jagged edges pointing inwards towards the glass. Make sure that there's no pressure being applied around the edges. So before we can put this thing down, we want to make sure those curves are exactly the same as the curve of the glass. So if it's aluminum, you're obviously doing a little bit of metal work. So if you know anything about working with metal, you might find that that's useful. You might find it's useful to know a little bit about electronics as well. So I don't know, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, trying to fill in some of the space here. This is going to go into some adhesive strips being applied here in a little bit. In any case, we're going to put the motherboard back in, and we're going to go ahead and connect everything up and make sure everything is reconnected where it goes. And then we're going to test the display out real quick, make sure everything's working on it okay. So I know what kind of a camera setup I want and the kind of quality I'd like to be able to get, and I just don't have the money. I can't afford to spend the money on that. I wish I could, but it's going to be a little while yet, it looks like, a little bit longer than I had hoped. But once I have that, I'll be able to do videos on some of the computer repairs that we do, and get at least a couple of different camera angles that we can switch back and forth from, and then also as well the microscope camera, and that will be nice because that'll be about 3 cameras that we'll have going. Hopefully we'll be able to get all that in the next year, 2018. Hopefully we'll be able to do all that. So the home button is facing down on the mat, so all I have to do if I want to press the home button is just kind of push down on the bottom of the phone. But if I want to check the little buttons on the left and right side, I need to lift it up a little bit. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to just start checking those buttons out and make sure they're cool. So it looks like we've got a working display. We can go ahead and power it down. Move on to the next thing. So we'll disconnect the battery again and the display. Set that to the side. So we're going to put a little piece of Kapton tape over the battery connector here, so that there's no chance that the battery can touch while we work on the front side of the phone. And now we get to do the most important part of the entire repair. That's what somebody told me. They posted a comment. You said it was start to finish, but you left out the most important part of the entire repair. Because I had cut out this part here, putting the adhesive on. So yeah, if you need to see what's going on, how do you apply the adhesive, what kind of adhesive I use, or whatever, you can use super heavy duty 3M, you can use 5mm, 2mm, 7mm, and a variety of other millimeters to suit your fancy. And basically, if you're doing it manually like we're doing here, you will want to cut to fit. Otherwise, you can purchase pre-cut adhesive, which is never very good. and that's why I use my own and cut to fit, because I like to get the stuff that actually holds and doesn't come loose later on. The last thing I want to do is have, you know, one of these phones leave here and come back 2 weeks later because the adhesive is not holding it down anymore and it's starting to separate, and yeah, customers don't like that either. So this part is so boring. That's why I usually cut it out. I figured, you know, honestly, I figured, okay, so you have this adhesive, you have to put it on, and it's a pressure sensitive, so you have to apply a little bit of pressure in order for it to sort of activate and stick down permanently. I don't know, it just didn't seem to me to be the most important part of the actual repair. But some people seem to think so, so we're going to leave this one in. And if anybody wants to know how to do it, I'll just put a link in the comment or something and reply back and say, watch this video. I'm going to show the whole thing. So frankly, these videos are not really intended for just anybody to be able to do these repairs. So I may be new to YouTube and YouTube content and all this kind of stuff, but I've been doing computer repair, electronic repair for more than 20 years. So I at least have a clue of what I'm doing. I don't always know everything that I'm doing. I have to learn too, new stuff all the time. But it's not like I'm just decided one day, hey, you know what, I think I'll fix my, you know, $600, $800, $900, $1,000 phone or watch, you know. Let me just look that up on YouTube and find somebody that's got a video, and let me give that a try. Yeah, and I think while I'm at it, I'll do glass-only repair too. So really, these videos are intended for people that may be just learning. Obviously, that's fine. Or somebody who's you know, who's been doing it, but maybe this particular phone or some particular part of one of these repairs is not something that they've done before, and they want to, you know, check it out, even though they may already have been doing other things, or just, you know, for general educational purposes. So you have some concept of how this sort of thing is done. And so there's certainly nothing wrong with somebody learning for the first time, picking up, you know, a phone and giving it, you know, giving it a whirl. But it's, again, it's not like I'm putting these up here saying, yeah, okay, so I think, you know, anybody, some people just don't have a knack for this sort of thing, and it's not because they don't know how or because they're not intelligent or whatever. They just either don't have the patience, or they just don't really have the sort of knack of being able to take things apart and put them back together. There's also the quality of the repair that you have to kind of take into consideration. You want to do a good job, especially if you're charging somebody to do it, you know, or working on somebody else's phone. If it's your own personal phone and you want to, you know, learn on that phone, by all means, you know, go for it. But if you're working on somebody else's phone, Hopefully a guide like this will be useful for you if you've not done anything like this before, or you just need to look at one specific part of the video that maybe you're not sure about. That's kind of what I find when I'm looking up a lot of things on YouTube for repairs, is that it's not the whole repair that I want to see. I just need, there's a one little special something that I just need to see if I understand it correctly, or if I think I'm doing something wrong. I'll have some kind of an idea if someone else has done it and is showing on a video or some other guide that kind of gives you an idea of where you need to go with one particular type of repair. So it's not usually the entire repair that I might be looking at. I may just be looking at one specific point in the repair, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what most people do, that do this sort of thing all the time. And there's lots of people out there that have, you know, a lot of subscribers, you know, 250,000 subscribers, 500,000 or 1 million, that do this kind of thing on a routine basis, and they really have the history. They've been doing YouTube channel, whatever they've had for the last 7 years or whatever it is, and they've come a long way. I mean, some of them I can remember, you know, watching myself easily 7-8 years ago, whatever, that had just, you know, maybe been up for maybe a year, or if that, maybe not even that long. So I've followed some of these guys for since they practically first started, and I've watched them improve over time, and I hope to do the same. So you can see I'm using this metal tool to apply pressure on the adhesive tape. So in case anybody's wondering what's going on, I'm basically using the pressure to act. This adhesive is sort of activated by pressure. It's pressure that keeps it down, makes it stick. So if you put it on there, you want to make sure it's you've applied some pressure evenly across the whole thing before you know, pull the masking off and attempt to seat the new display or whatever you're putting on there. A lot of this stuff is prep work, cleaning and scraping away any leftover adhesive from the previous adhesive. That's a big factor. Nothing you put on here is going to stick if you don't. If it's got dirt and debris and other things like that on there, it's simply not going to stay stuck down. And again, you run the risk of leaving broken bits of glass or anything in there that could potentially cause a stress fracture when you put the new screen on. So I apologize to anybody out there that already knows all this stuff, but I figured I would bring it up since somebody has kind of made comments on the channel before about leaving this out. And they asked me questions like, you know, what is that stuff you're putting on there? Why are you putting it on there? Honestly, if you're having to ask that question, you probably shouldn't be fixing this phone. I mean, I can't believe. Goodness. But if you're just learning, explaining it to you hopefully well enough so that you can get the idea and understand what's going on. So we did do all of that adhesive manually. Not a pretty sight, not a fun thing to do. but we're done, and now we're going to move on. Luckily for us, the rear glass actually has its own adhesive. Now on the rear glass, this particular one, again, we're going to apply a little bit of pressure, but we're not using a metal tool because we don't want to scrape up the paint that's on the back of this thing. That wouldn't be a good thing to do. This is not a generic back either. These are supposedly genuine. That's what they claim they are anyway. But you can definitely tell a difference between generic and the originals. Generic doesn't have any kind of writing on the no print, no Samsung, no nothing on the back of it, and they break really easy. So unfortunately they're kind of expensive if you buy the original part, but that's what I recommend. So in this case, the back glass came with a rear camera cover, the cover that goes around the camera and the sensors. Not all of them do, and sometimes you have to transfer the one from the original, so keep that in the back of your mind. You may have to warm it up a little bit and slide a tool underneath to separate that bezel and glass that goes around the camera and the sensors, and then transfer it over to the new rear glass. Some come that way, some don't. I don't always pay attention, and sometimes I'll get one that didn't have it or didn't come with it. I just didn't notice it, I guess, when we purchased it or whatever. We do have regular vendors that we order from, but generally speaking, if anybody asks me, where I purchase, where can I find this stuff, how much is it, all of this kind of stuff, I'm not likely to respond with anything more than look on the internet, try eBay or Amazon. But in all honesty, unless there's no one else that you can get it from, you're better off finding a good supplier that does this sort of thing, exclusively. There are some good ones out there. There are some really crappy ones out there. So I'm not really going to get into, who I think is better or worse, That's just something you have to figure out for yourself. Work it out. A lot of, at least I've heard a lot of repair shops don't like to work on Samsung phones, so I don't know. I've heard people say that, but on the other hand, I know lots of shops that do. So I guess it just depends on where you're located and what's available to you in the way of a repair shop. People ship us stuff all the time from all over the United States, so I don't just rely on people in the local area. In my local area, we have a pretty big population, so I do get a lot of business, and most of it probably does come from local people around here. But we get a lot of it from outside the outside of the our state, and all over the United States. Stuff gets shipped in all the time because they can't find a decent place. So anyway, I hope this video was useful and helpful to someone out there. Just did a few little quick checks on this phone. Everything looks pretty good. So I appreciate you guys watching. I hope it helps somebody out there. If you did, like and subscribe, share. And I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks, and bye-bye now.